How's it going?
Not bad. How do you?
Good.
Afternoon, Yijing.
Hello. Hi, Kafu and Sam.
No, no,
Say
man.
again?
We need
Okay.
something that is like the uh, moral equivalent of that thing where every work queue thread loudly complains if something throws an exception in SeaStor. It is problematic. Like if code in a future throws an exception, unless you specifically caught it somewhere, it just like disappears. The reactor just throws it away. Not a big problem, but it's like a quality of life thing.
Sorry, Sam. I didn't follow you. So you're talking about the back pressure thing, right?
No, I'm saying generally speaking, if you mess up and a future throws an exception, it just like disappears. The things further
Oh,
down the future chain never execute, it just drops off the face of the planet.
all right. So the slot is never put back if the session is thrown, right?
Sorry?
You mean
Well,
the slot is never put back if a exception is thrown?
oh, it's put back, but the OSD continues running, and it probably shouldn't. Like when one of our work queues throws an exception in Classic, it crashes the OSD. And it prints out the exception, which is helpful with the backtrace. Just for debuggability. That would be nice.
Yeah, I've seen some cases the reactor complain about an uncatched exception.
I mean, that's the best it can do, right? Like the reactor can't do anything about it. All it can do is log it. But it would be nice
Yeah.
if we could set the reactor, give it a config variable, where if that happens, it dumps the backtrace and crashes the process.
Yes,
At the
that's
very
the
least,
best.
dumps the backtrace.
Mhm.
There's pretty
Yes.
much no case where it's okay for an exception to bubble all the way up to the reactor. That should never happen. It should either be caught further down the future chain because you knew an exception could happen and you accounted for it, or it's an exception that you genuinely didn't think of. Probably means you should crash the OSD. Or it could be caught more granularly. It could be something like you could consider the PG to be poisoned, but that's hard to reason about. So just a minor thing. I've been learning to debug SeaStar this week. So
But but since that does not allow offer a tool named address to lines, you know it, right?
that's true. That part is bad. Um, you can still see where in. Okay, so um, I believe the exception does still have enough information to work back to what the line number where it actually crashed was. And that will give you the backtrace up to the point where that future started, or where that continuation was
Hmm.
started. But that's true. It won't give you the rest of the future chain. That would be great if it did, but
Yes.
that is another thing we could conceivably add. That would be really, really, really great from a debugging standpoint. Because if you have two different ways to generate a particular .then chain, then you have no way of knowing which of the two of them spawned it if it crashes there.
Yes, Sam, could you log it
Yeah, absolutely.
in project page so we don't lost it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It
This is
it
wait. Do
it
you mean
will definitely help.
on the Ceph tracker?
Mm, um, we don't have a tag for it. Probably you can use the
Actually, I think I'm
project
just going to
page.
add it to the document we're building up for face-to-face discussion. It's sort of
Okay, that'll
just
be good.
one of a family of things. Basically, we want to try to recover the debugging environment as much as we can of,
Yeah, we don't
threads.
we don't recover, but it would be ideal if we
Huh?
know the backtrace
It would
in
be
a
nice if we
readable
can,
one.
yeah. So there are a lot of things we're just used to having from threads. It'd be nice if we had something kind of equivalent, sort of, at least when we want it.
So we have a program here. Um, and in last week I was working on preparing for the slides for Civil was working with the Redux on it, and in the meanwhile, I was trying to. A side product of it is I'm trying to rethink about the CI process and how we test the Crimson OSD, because it's a pain to restart the cluster every time I run the write test and retest. So I try to implement the ops required by Rados cleanup. It basically what it does to enumerate the object injected into the pool and try to remove them all. So two ops are added for this for supporting this utility. One is the PGNLS to enumerate the object in the range, and another is to remove an object. It's pending on review, and that's all I have. Chimei.
So what the test tool you mentioned just now?
Rados. It's Rados CRI.
Okay. You just use Rados Bench, right?
Yes, Rados Bench. And to clean it up, I use Rados clean up. This is the command I was talking about to clean up the object injected into the pool.
Rados Bench. Okay, clean up. Okay. So so Kefu, for the last time your test result, did you set the async messenger thread pool, and you just use the default?
Yes.
The default
except
configuration.
The pool size.
Okay. So
and
that
the
means
PG number.
yeah. So the self OSD will default side async messenger 3 threads. So we one thread compare with sync messenger 3 thread and OSD thread maybe 16 thread. Or the SSD, if you use SSD hard disk. So do you think it is fair for us to do the test comparison?
It's not fair from a Crimson OSD's point of view, but it still beats the classic OSD. So that's what we want to see. So I think it's not enough, even it's not a fair game.
So last time, before I remember that we mentioned how to do the test, we will start as many OSD threads as the cores. So that will be
that's an approach to test CFOSD, to saturate to make full use of the cores in the system. For example, if I have 8 core in the box, I will start 8 OSD, and
yes, then we can do the comparison.
Yes.
Do you have the plan?
I can do it probably after the civil account.
Okay, I see. So okay, my side update.
Sorry, are you trying to get the maximum throughput on a machine, or are you trying to get a comparison of CPU cycles? Just a thought, you could pin classic OSD to 1 core. That would be another way to get that answer. Just for the record, it's not totally fair. Classic OSD would have to do more thread switching than it would normally have to do, but classic OSD also has way more threads than cores normally, so I'm not sure it's really that big a difference. Just a thought.
Yes, we can also pin classic OSD to a single core and use a single work thread. Pretty much just to pin all the threads to a single core. That's one way to do it.
That would probably be less work than actually starting up 8 OSDs.
Yes,
so Samuel, you mean pin the self OSD thread to a single core?
For classic, yeah, there's a way in Linux to just force all of the threads for a particular process onto a single core. So if you do that, it'll be sort of a one-to-one comparison.
Is there some truth to pin the Ceph thread to the core?
It's not built into Ceph, but you can do it in Linux. You just tell Linux it's like CPU master something.
Oh, CPU. Use the Linux system.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You can use a utility to pin a process thread to a certain core. I believe there's a utility to do it.
Okay, I see. Another thing I want to see that last time I attended the SPDK summit, and Intel has the persistent memory, so that memory can be used. It's not it can be used memory. It's non-volatile. So do we consider how to use it to improve the self performance, because it can be used as memory and is non-volatile. It persistent memory, but
If
it's
you're asking,
fast as memory. The performance is close to the memory. Yeah, close
if
to
you're
the
talking,
RAM.
I
I mean,
bet
so we're
PMM.
PMAM.
Yes, PMM.
I bet
PMAM.
this will be persistent memory. I bet it will be most useful thing for components like RocksDB. Basically, it could change the entire paradigm because of journals, because of killing the necessity for journaling.
yeah,
Write data twice.
it's even bigger. Like you could use it as a generalized persistent caching tier. For SeaStor or whatever we want to call it, we'd probably want to take persistent memory into account when we're designing it. At least as a persistent cache for the metadata, probably more. Go ahead, sorry.
My thing is that it can be taken as the system memory, can be used just like the system memory. You map it to the system memory, just like the RAM. But when the power off, the content is still there. So can we just reduce some self IO pass, and then make the client request return quickly? So I'm not sure how to use the PM.
So the trick is that persistent memory is byte addressable, but it doesn't have any easy transaction machinery built into it, right? So the problem isn't that the data won't be there when it comes back up, it's that it'll be nonsense. So Intel itself actually has libraries that they really, 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 really want people using, because different persistent memory is going to have different primitives for doing atomic operations and such. So what we probably do is there's generally, I think, some way to configure the persistent memory so however much you want is configured in this mode that's usable by this Intel library. Then we would stage everything we possibly can for an I/O directly to that, possibly even directly out of the network card, right? That would be the best case scenario, that we don't even have to copy it. And then consider it committed at that point, and then more slowly stage it back off to cheaper NVMe, while keeping probably the metadata in persistent memory.
I mean,
so yeah, that's definitely the right way to think about it.
Yeah, we are at the beginning of the Crimson, so maybe 2 years later, the hardware will getting cheaper. So we should consider a long way.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's probably always going to be the case that there's going to be something cheaper than persistent memory. So it will likely be the case that you want a hierarchical approach. Like you just assume something like persistent memory exists at the top, and you try to back IOs immediately with that. But they'll probably still want to destage it to something slower.
I bet that PMM will be mostly interesting for bringing OMAP features.
That would be the metadata part, yeah.
To Crimson.
Yeah, exactly.
If I recall correctly, the atomicity is not a so huge problem. Intel implemented some extensions to ISA, extra instruction to flash
It's not that so much. It's that it's hard to do correctly. So it's better to use the libraries they built rather than those.
Well, of course, nobody's even tries to think about consuming those devices directly. I would say that it's even not enough. Better will be used key-value library. I would expect that. I won't be surprised if vendors will start working on that, or maybe already started.
Yeah, most likely. But that's what we do. We would integrate whatever level of library makes sense, and then build up from there to get to SeaStor.
Yeah, just give a proposal. So just because we are at the beginning of the Crimson, so we can think of the new hardware features. Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
And my side, last week I'm trying to set up the test environment by the self-deploy, but my test build environment has some issue. The bin package always reported the broken. It is broken, cannot be installed. So I'm struggling with my test environment, and maybe I will need to set a new.
Sorry. Can you go into some more detail about what's broken?
Yeah. So when I build the bin package, I need to use the self-deploy to deploy a cluster across the at least include 2 servers. I want to test the current OSD in this on the bare metal at least 2 bare metal servers. So I build the bin package. I use the self-deploy to deploy the cluster, and the bin package build success. I didn't see any error, but when I use the self-deploy to install the self package, and it is always said the package is broken. It couldn't install. And then I manually.
So what do you mean by broken? As far as I know, self-deploy is supposed to download the package from SeaStor.
Yeah, I didn't use the release the self package. I built my own bin package from the source code.
Does self-deploy have a way to use that one? I haven't used it in many years. Also, does self-deploy have the ability to deploy Crimson at all? Yeah, I didn't think so. I don't think Crimson will start up with 2 OSDs either.
Oh, so the bin package not build Crimson. Oh, that's why maybe I with the SeaStor on, and maybe it is It is.
Well, I mean, it's not in principle. It shouldn't be hard for it to do so, because so far that I've seen.
I didn't enable self SeaStor. I just downloaded the master branch and changed nothing and build.
No, it doesn't even build Crimson by default. It doesn't build Crimson by default at all. You have to add the with SeaStor.
Yeah, by default no Crimson OSD. So I just build the master branch and change nothing, not enable a SeaStor. But still has the problem when I use the self-deploy to install my own build the bin package. It decided the package is broken. I asked my colleague to try again on his environment. He said it's success. It can be installed, but on my machine it doesn't work. So I am trying to figure out what is the problem. So I try several times and on different versions, it's the same problem. And then I just use the make to build use the make to build the self and make install. When I use the self-deploy to start monitor, it decided monitor cannot be started. So maybe something wrong with my build environment. So that's my job.
It's probably the deploy machines actually. Is it like an apt error? Or like a depackage error?
So this machine is my developer machine. I used it before. It works well. I don't know what's wrong recently.
No, I mean the one you're deploying, that's almost certainly the problem. It's probably not your build machine.
Pardon?
So wherever self-deploy is trying to install the packages, if it says the packages are broken, it's probably not self-deploy saying that. It's probably depackage on the target machine. So something is messed up with apt or depackage on that Debian box or whatever.
Probably you have a pre-installed package which is not cleaned up, and
that's probably it. Master has weird version numbers, so it may not even recognize it as being newer. So you might have to purge all of the existing packages.
Yeah, I purged the self. I purged the self data, and I do the auto remove, and I manually deleted all about self folder. So still has a problem.
Well, this would be depackaged state, so it wouldn't be anything about the Ceph directories. It's just depackaged.
The package is
So if you do a depackaged search or something for anything with Ceph in it, you might find a package you missed. That might be the problem. Just a guess. Other than that, you probably want like an admin to help you with it.
So how to fix it?
Sorry?
So how to fix this problem?
Honestly, anytime I get in trouble with depackage, I just Google the error string and then do
Okay.
whatever the internet tells me to do.
Okay. Thank you. So that's from my student, not much progress and just a struggle with the build.
Yeah, Truman, you can also ping me over the IRC. I can help
Yeah.
with the depict thing. I've
There are
been
people
investigating for 4 years.
There are other
Okay,
people in the
thank
staff
you.
channel with more experience with it too.
Okay, thank you.
And Redec, how's it going?
Last week, I was mostly working on the on investigation of the performance regression we got. Let me provide you with some links. It turned out we have at least three sources contributing, three factors contributing to the problem. Here is the gist. Basing on that, on this investigation, we made.
Sorry for interrupting you. Could you paste the link of the gist? Otherwise, we'll have trouble to access.
Oh, sorry. Apologize. I thought it's a link, but it's not. Well, let me correct myself. Now should be better.
Thank you.
Basing on that, we made some branches with hotfixes that would finally allow to make the testing. Some of those fixes have been already merged, but I'm looking for a way to fight the problem with latency introduced by message batching into more elegant way. For testing, it was just short-circuited, and I'm pretty far away from being happy with doing that. Beside of the investigation, the basic write path has been merged. I've sent a PR for basic PG creation. Kifo, I saw your comments. Thanks, I'm addressing them, and also appending some commits for cleanup around PG and PG backend class. For instance, we are OSD, or the OSD class stores uses the SeaStor as a unique pointer, but it's also buried inside the PG backend. So I switched from a unique pointer in OSD to SeaStor low-weight shared PTR in OSD and PG backend. On the entire path is I'm handling the object store via shared pointer now.
I'll take a look at it. So you will be sending the PR to the refractory of the.
Or maybe I will just append. It depends whether there will be a conflict or not. If there will be a conflict on applying the cleanup, I will just push the cleanup patches in the PG PR.
Okay.
Right now I'm working on third thing. It's about the caching. Basically, the shared LRU introduces we are paying a high price for caching, and I'm not sure it's really necessary. I would when it comes to random operations, the likelihood of a cache hit, I would say, is quite small. The cache is simple LRU is quite small, around 20 entries. It definitely can. I would expect it can help a lot with sequential operations, but it's not per client. It doesn't depend on a client. It's not connected to a client. It's per PG backend. It's a per-PG cache. So if even if multiple clients are doing sequential operations, those entries are mixed for them. I'm thinking about separating cache, about making the cache per client actually.
Which cache is this?
Object previously it was object info T, now it's
Okay.
object context cache.
See.
So you're suggesting we use a different cache for each client? That would be crazy, I think.
Well,
Or
yeah.
use tagged cache.
Well, for one thing, if we're using shared LRU for that, that was never written to be performant at all. Like, it's not fast. Or not fast. It's not fast at all. Like the EC backend has a custom cache because there's no way shared LRU is efficient. It's not. It allocates like crazy. Like every time you manipulate the cache, you allocate a standard list iterator or whatever. Like it's super slow. So if that's an actual performance bottleneck, the first answer is probably to make it not suck.
Well, there is an old PR optimizing the shared LRU. I could try to
Yeah, I don't
revisit
think you should optimize it though. So the nice thing about shared LRU is that it's templated and convenient to use. So for things like OSD map that are very rarely updated, where its only real purpose is to make sure that we don't have two copies of an OSD map around, it's fine. That's no problem. If we want an actual performant LRU with some properties, like we should write a new one. I don't think we really want to change.
Do
Well,
we
we
really
certainly
want
don't want
to
to make it
have a cache there? Do we really need it?
for the OSD maps. Yes,
Maybe the
actually,
best
we do.
idea,
No,
maybe
so the
the
reason
best
for the
idea is
OSD
to
maps.
not cache.
Oh, to not cache object infos. That's actually a valid point. For one thing, it'll be double caching, right? Any reasonable SeaStor implementation, once that happens, will have some kind of metadata caching, right? So what we're really saving time on is
Of course.
decoding the buffer list. And that may be valuable. I'm not sure about that. That could actually be worth it on its own. I'm
But
not sure.
definitely we need a global registry for object context.
In the sense that you can't have
It will
two
be-
object contexts alive for the same one at the same time. That's true. Yes.
This will be, well, at the moment it's not a problem at all because handling of single MOSD op is basically atomical.
Yeah, it won't
well,
be in general though.
For the clients we are using for Rados Bench, there is single op in MOSD op, so and we are using memcache. Sorry, we are using memstore.
Looking ahead
But
slightly,
after switch,
even for writes, it won't be. We need to be able to project state because there will be pipelined writes on the same object where you have to distinguish
Yes.
between committed state and currently projected state for in-progress IOs. We will need an object context, and we will need to ensure uniqueness. So for that reason, having
Yes.
the shared pointer thing is certainly convenient, right? Because it just does that. That's what it's there for.
But sounds like
it's really
the
that expensive.
simple RU is not fully necessary.
Also, doesn't shared LRU have a lock in it?
It had,
I think it does.
but
You can
not
SeaStor that.
in builds.
Okay, good. That's what I was going to suggest. Yeah, that's fine. And you think that's what caused the performance slowdown, adding the object context cache?
Well, it's one of the three contributing factors.
Fair enough. I mean, if you think about it, what you really want is when you read an object context, you want to create a heap structure that has the object context in it. And then you want a list, whatever, header thingy in the struct that you link into the LRU. You don't want to be allocating anything in that path. Right, because the object context is only ever going to be present in one LRU. So we don't actually need anything containing a pointer to the object context like we have now. That's how shared LRU works, right? It doesn't make any assumptions about the struct. What we really want is something like a boost intrusive LRU. Actually, you should check whether there is a boost intrusive LRU. That would be easily the easiest way out. See what I mean?
Well, we could do that. Still, at the moment I'm focusing mostly on the global registry. It will be necessary to
No, yeah,
avoid.
right. Same deal though. You can use an intrusive map to avoid having to allocate crap in a standard map, which is what shared LRU is doing. It's got two of them, right? It's got a standard map with pairs of whatever the key is to whatever the type
No,
is.
we won't want to use, definitely won't want to use STD map there.
I
Lookup is too
know that,
costly,
but I'm
and
telling
we
you
will
that I'm telling you that shared LRU does use standard map, making it a bad choice.
Yeah,
I'm saying you want to use boost intrusive set or something.
Yes, we
You can
use
construct
the inclusive list.
construct yourself a registry-like
well,
structure, with or without,
we will want to have a hash map. That's for sure.
or whatever.
If I recall correctly,
Yes.
if
What I'm suggesting,
I recall correctly,
all I'm
shared
suggesting
LRU
is. Sorry, go
please
ahead.
go.
I was just saying,
If I recall
manipulating.
correctly-
So, putting things into the LRU and manipulating the LRU. Like, okay, I got an item, now I need you to move it to the top of the LRU. Neither of those options should allocate. You should just be manipulating pointers present in the struct up into a set and also a list. Right? That's the normal way of doing it in Linux kernel, for instance.
Aren't we doing that?
Shared LRU does not do that. Shared LRU is really stupid. It just uses a standard map and a list. And a standard list, I think, unless it's been rewritten since the last time we got it.
Well, simple LRU, shared LRU is wrapped around simple LRU. Simple LRU is using now hash. It's using now STD unordered map.
Yeah, which
and
allocates for everything you put in it. Right? Because this doesn't make any assumptions about the types you're putting into it. It can't assume it has list hooks to use. If look up the implementation of boost intrusive list, I think that'll illustrate the difference. With boost intrusive list, you have to add a type either in the struct.
Yes, I know how it works.
Okay, so I'm saying that may be a significant amount of the reason for the performance problem. Allocating is expensive in this path, and shared LRU allocates a lot.
But in perf, it should be visible that we are spending a lot of time with an allocator.
And
in
it's
that
not?
way, if the allocation is a problem. I bet
it's
the problem is the memory fragmentation on lookups.
Okay. So you think we'd be better off? Okay, so that's why you're saying you'd rather, but it's already using an unordered map, so that shouldn't be the problem.
Well, those things are separate. If you want those things,
oh, I see.
We are using.
It's a different one for each PG.
We need to traverse not only hash unordered map. We also need to traverse around map, which means that we need to make a lot of compares around elements sitting over very fragmented memory.
Could be.
In the worst case, we are looking up in two maps.
It still seems like if this is performance sensitive, we should decide how we want it to work and write a new one.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. And like we don't need the destructor behavior that simple LR uses. It's convenient, but we don't really want to be using shared pointers necessarily. That's not something we want to tie ourselves to.
Yeah, we could always return an object with the built-in pointers.
Yeah. And again, for that, you can use an intrusive pointer, which is potentially faster. So whatever.
But well, it's about caching. Caching. It's not a priority for now. Global registry will be. Basically, we need to guarantee that if a write is a modifying operation is ongoing,
Something's pinned in cache.
The value of object context can be manipulated by only one operation in a given time. So I guess
that's actually not true.
Okay.
That's actually not true either. It's much worse than that. That's the problem. There are two pieces of information. So for every field that represents the object as it exists, there are two versions. There's the current committed version, which is what you'll get if you cut the power to the OSD right now and restart it. And then there's the current projected version. The projected version is what will be true of the object if all pending I/O completes. And that's what you use to validate parameters to operations. Like that's how you find out whether you're writing past the end of the object or reading a bit that exists, that kind of stuff. It's also the case that a read may need to block itself behind
Yes, that was the reason why
a
we
write.
were using that. That's the reason why OSD is using two object context in for operation. One is the current existing. Second one will be changed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Although we probably don't want to do that. We
using
them, but, yeah.
Yes, we are currently in Crimson. We are using single object context.
Cool.
And it's fine till I bet it will be fine till we can guarantee there is single accessor, that there is single mutator to this object context.
I'm telling you that really won't ever be true. You can have three operations at different stages in their execution, all modifying different fields. Not literally at the same time because it's, single threaded, but you can have operation C that's much further along in its pipeline, updating something because it's finishing a later stage after operation A begins modifying something early. That is possible. We'll want to do that in general. For instance, for modifying usage counts, right?
Wait a second. Do you mean by operation, you mean OSD up or a client request represented by MOSD up?
I mean, so generally speaking, I can think off the top of my head of at least three things we need to worry about that can mutate OSD metadata and on disk state. I/O operations from clients will turn into some kind of state machine that represents that process as it goes through whatever it needs to do. Additionally, recovery operations will need to update whether an object is even readable at all and which OSDs it's on. State like that we'll want to remember. And you also have to update like whether it's missing, that kind of crap. Object context will probably contain a wait list, probably, I'm guessing. This is all stuff we're going to want to talk about in Barcelona, by the way. And finally, scrub, for instance, often needs to block an operation just because you need a consistent view of the operation for a brief period. That's just quick. Like if we ever choose to do snap trimming, that too, because that we'll need to look at the current snap state and modify it. It's what I'm saying is it's not ever going to be the case that just one operation is ever touching the object context. We're going to have to think carefully about how all of these different state machines interact.
1 second. I mean that we need to guarantee there is one single mutator. So if I multiple pieces, multiple operations, multiple MOSD up handlers, for instance, to use the same object context, we need to disallow more than one.
No, we would pipeline them. So it's possible for we
means
want
that
to allow
in a given particular moment there will be only one single mutator to object
in a
state.
particular moment, yes, but any particular one of these operations may actually take place at 4 or 5 distinct points in time with other work happening between it, right? So we already know that there's only ever one mutator because of the single thread, right? So that's just trivially true. What I'm saying is that
still it should work, I bet. Even now it works because the handling of MOSD up is basically atomical. Even yes, we have a lot of continuation. We'll have a lot of promises, a lot of futures on the path, but they are fulfilled. They are fulfilled instantly.
But
so
we're not
there is
designing
no
for the. We're not designing for the memstor implementation. We're designing for one that actually does I/O, right? That's what I'm talking about. Ultimately, I would expect the process of processing an MOSD op could go from either from 0 gaps in the case that the call to the
a
relatively simple
that's
operation.
The reason why we need.
Hang on. A relatively simple operation that goes directly to the disk. It's already in cache and it just whips right back out, right? No problem. But it could be much longer. It could be a multi-stage operation. Like RBD's operations are often very long. They're dependent read-write chains because of the object classes. It's not that we'll necessarily implement those immediately, but we want to think about how they'll fit together. That's all.
So it's not unacceptable to add a mutex between the the mutating of ops
Well,
like this?
no, I don't think we want a mutex either, because a mutex protects against one really specific thing. It protects against like two things mutating the same thing at the same time. What we want to do is we want to define, okay, these are the possible stages an IO can be in. And in stage 0, you're allowed to do these things. In stage 1, you're allowed to do these things. Stage 2, you're allowed to do these things. And as long as we make sure that there's only ever, that operations never cross each other in that queue, we should be able to put together a protocol so that there's no problem. We don't really want to use the mutex directly because that's a really poor way to represent dependent chains of operations. What we want to use instead is like a wait queue.
Why we just cannot do a promise and future in cache?
So that's a valid possibility. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The entire idea is to have only one user of let's forget about reads for a second. Let's say we are talking only about writes. The idea will be to have only one user of the object context. If you grab context from the global registry, nobody other can grab it till you don't return it.
I got it. Yeah, right. So that means that your future is now blocked and sits in the reactor until this promise is
exactly
released. Or actually, do promises? How are promises implemented? Are they actually waitlists? Is that how that works? So one reason why we may or may not want to do that is we want to know why an operation is blocked. Is the short answer. We want to know for debugging purposes a priori. Like right now, there's a running OSD on a customer on a customer server. Why is it not making progress? Right? So we want to be able to dump all of the current operations and find out why they're blocked. We could really dig in and extend SeaStor so that it can generally reason about the blockchains between, wow, definitely need to not say that, sorry. The blocking dependencies between futures and promises so that they're annotated and you can sort of figure out why something's blocked. Or we could just say, you're not blocked on this promise, you're blocked in the stage in your state machine that says you're waiting for the object context you need, right? That lets us be super explicit about it.
Should be shouldn't be addressable with extra field inside object context?
Yeah, but this isn't the only place things are going to block. There are going to be like 4 of these, maybe 6 longer, like many of them. Many of them will be incredibly rare. You'll hardly ever stop there. But when you do stop there, you really want to know, right? So we want to be able to reason about all these things kind of the same way. And it would be nice if there were like one place in the code where you look and go, oh, this is what this is what an op does as it goes through its process. These are all the places it can block.
Cannot we treat grab, for instance, another possible mutator of another guy that really needs to have object context for its own? Cannot we treat it as just a mutator operation, just like regular write?
Yeah, we can. We just don't want to. For one thing, it's way more complicated than it seems. If you go look at the way classic OSD works around snap and scrub, assumptions were made early that all you need is a read and a write lock. Those assumptions were wrong.
Okay.
Like that's the easiest way I can put it. It turned out no, that's really not enough.
Good to know. We'll take a look.
It's not that we need a lot more. It's just that we want to be deliberate about it. It would be good to I think in Barcelona it would be a good exercise to sort of game out how recovery, for instance, interacts with client I/O in Classic, and then sort of think about, okay, so which of these things are relevant for Crimson and how do we want to handle that? Can we just ignore some of it, or what's the simplest structure that gets us everything we need?
Tim, could you note some of this down?
I did actually.
Operation
and IO.
So I can sort it over in the following days before we
it's
have
in the
a
Crimson
meeting
F2F discussion. It's in the Crimson F2F discussion document. I have a couple of bullet points.
Okay.
Guys, can you share a link, please?
Oh yeah, this is just the one Kifu sent out. Let me reshare it. Here, there you go.
Thanks.
Sorry, I was bad about it. I didn't update it before, but I'm updating a little bit more now. I'm also not sure how smart it is to have a ton of futures in the SeaStor reactor, but on the other hand, I guess I don't know that much about the way it's implemented, so I do not know. In other words, I'm concerned that if you have too many possibly runnable futures, it slows down the reactor's processing thing. I'm also worried about priority inversion and a whole bunch of other stuff that operating systems usually take care of for us. In other words, if it's just a okay, so for instance, in the object context thing, it will often be the case that there are two things waiting and one of them is important and the other one really isn't. That's true of both snap trimming and scrub. So in that case, you can't just wait on a promise. You have to wait on a promise with some sort of concept of priority. And already that's starting to overload the promise concept a little more than I think is a good idea. Just one example. Sorry, I didn't mean to take over.
Probably we can discuss this over the face-to-face meetup in Barcelona, and I will take a closer look at the notes in a face-to-face Google Docs. Yingxing?
Yeah. So last week I'm working on the slides and materials for the Barcelona presentation, and Redok, you said that the batching will hurt the latency, but I think we might always need to exchange some latency for batching,
Yes.
because it can improve the
throughput. The same,
throughput.
absolutely the same trade-off with execution stages. And
Yeah,
we discussed.
but
There was an idea. Yes.
I don't know
continue.
how much extent we might accept to exchange latency for throughput.
Yeah, it's basically a question about requirements. Whether we want to favor low latency, or we can ignore it a bit and prefer higher throughput. I don't personally.
Mm-hmm. And yeah,
I think at this moment we can add an option which can be configured at least at the when the creation OSD starts. Probably we can also make it a runtime option, and later on we need to figure out if it can be adaptive one, or we can just expose to our user.
Because I think Messenger also doesn't provide such an option, I think. So yeah, maybe we can provide it later, or. And I also found from my testing, I test several rounds because I found some data is not accurate. I just found that sometimes async messenger's performance is not very stable. Sometimes it is very good, and sometimes it's not good. So I just did it some more times to try to get some perfect to some more accurate numbers in my data, and that's all.
Yeah, I'm curious regarding to accurate. How do you define the accuracy of your benchmark?
So I just run if I found some data doesn't make sense. For example, sometimes it's 10 seconds, sometimes it's 20 seconds. So I just run the specific case some more times, and if it goes to stable state, and I just pick 3 of them and calculate the average number.
So you are removing filter out the outliers. That's what you mean,
yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
before we wrapping up this stand-up, I just want to make sure all of us will be attending Civilcon will be around at the afternoon of 18th. After 18th, can all of us make the face-to-face meeting regarding the readers? Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Let me check out the calendar.
That's the only other meetings are on, right?
Yes, Saturday afternoon, I think. 18th, yes.
Cool.
And does it work for you, Radek?
Yes, I'm arriving around 4 p.m. On Saturday.
Okay, so you want to make it at 2 p.m. So can we when shall we have the discussion regarding to Crimson? Because I don't think Radek will be around on there before like 6 p.m. right? Before you are leaving at 4 p.m.
Sorry, I'm arriving at 4 p.m.
Yes, because
I'm not sure.
If I understand correctly, we will have a face-to-face discussion regarding Riddle's roadmap at 2 p.m. Saturday.
Okay, on Saturday 2 p.m. Okay, I won't be able to make.
So if we will have a discussion regarding to on Crimson, we need to find a time slot working for all of us after time you will be arrived at Barcelona. I need to nail this time down before we arrived at Barcelona.
Well, I'm perfectly fine. I'm perfectly fine with talking around evening on the evening.
How about you, Sam?
I'd also be fine evening, or I'm getting in like middle of the day on Friday. I'm around all the time. And I'd be fine talking any day during KubeCon. Sure, it's interesting, but this is probably more important. But yeah, evening works for me too. That's totally fine.
Probably we can sync up at the evening, for example, 7 p.m. also to have a very short catch up with each other to understand how long we will take and nail down the next meeting time, or to see if we need to discuss further. How about that? I like
It's good.
7 p.m.
Do you mean we probably have 2 meetings for Crimson?
Probably.
Okay.
If it's been because we have a very long meet. Our team tends to have takes long for discussion. For discussion, and we have lots of topic for discussion. Okay, I will ping you guys I will ping you guys at for example like 6 p.m. and schedule a place and place at Barcelona at 7 p.m. I will ping you guys at 6 p.m. Okay. Talk to you later.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So just for one thing, my status, I've got like a single OSD up and activating with a PG, so that's good. For VStart, I mean it like started working 18 minutes ago, so I have to clean up the PR, but I should be able to pass it out or before the meeting, whatever. So I should be able to send out the PR maybe this week, or depending on flights, maybe next week, whatever. Additionally, though, so VStart, if I'm understanding it correctly, currently will just not, it doesn't daemonize at all, which I'm realizing is what we were talking about 2 weeks ago.
We can use the non-daemon option, so it will be started in the background, and I don't think we will support the daemonize because the system C will be doing it, right?
Oh, so VStart has a no daemon option?
Yes.
That's what I'm missing. Option. Okay, thanks. Cool.
And it was fixed a couple days ago.
In principle, mine should be able to start up 3 OSDs. I just haven't gotten that far yet. So with luck, that'll work too.
Okay. Sounds great. So any questions? Problems?
No, that's it.
Okay. See you guys in Barcelona.
See you there.
See you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a good night. Have a good evening. Have a good morning.